A successful career in law is all about planning. Hi, and welcome to the Law Simplified, the world's largest independent online law school platform. I'm your instructor, Shaveen Bandad-Nayaka. Irrespective of what path you intend to take in law, any career in this fraternity falls into three broad categories: the academic phase, the vocational phase, and the growth phase. How you succeed in each individual phase would determine how you progress to the next one and then the success in your career overall. How exactly can you make sure that you don't just pass through these phases but excel at it altogether? If you like the type of content that I make on this YouTube channel, do subscribe to the Law Simplified and leave a comment below of what other types of content that you would find helpful. If you are a student in your first, second, or third years of law, I would highly recommend the comprehensive online law school platform, complete with theory, tutorial, and workshop lessons based on the actual one-on-ones that I've conducted with first-class law students globally. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are three broad phases in any law student professional's life. You have the academic phase, the vocational phase, and the growth phase. So let's have a look at each one in turn. The most straightforward of these three phases would be the academic phase. It's the easiest to wrap one's head around. You decide if you are a student that's fresh out of, let's say, high school, someone who is in a jurisdiction where you can take up law as a first qualification, you might opt to do an LLB or a Bachelor of Laws. If you are someone who is coming in or pivoting from a different profession altogether, you might have to opt for something like a graduate diploma in law, for example. In either context, the very first step is to understand and go through the mechanics of that qualification. What I mean by that is not every LLB or Bachelor of Laws degree is made the same, nor would any GDL. There are some universities that are quite general in terms of their qualification and others that are very specialized. Some institutions and universities that focus heavily on skills development, while others have a reputation for knowledge and academia. Why this might be relevant is because a university that might be specialized in terms of their links to the industry is, if you are intending to be a practitioner, someone who's a barrister or a solicitor, those universities have a higher likelihood of providing you with opportunities of showcasing your skill to such professionals. Having competitions in terms of debates and moots, for example, sending you across the globe sometimes to compete. These kind of opportunities will only be available in an institution or a university that provides the relevant elective modules to fulfill the credit requirement for your qualification. Some distance learning or international programs might not give that opportunity, let alone an opportunity to interact with others, for example. So you have to be mindful in terms of your academic phase on what institution or university that you're selecting. In terms of the substantive law that you're going to cover, the core modules as well as the electives, that's the next thing to understand. Granted, the core modules are going to be the same irrespective of the qualification in terms of the university that you're targeting, but the electives are very important later on in your vocational stage, especially if you're trying to transition whatever you've learned, either in terms of your knowledge or in terms of the credits themselves, into whatever institution or the university that you're going to follow your vocational programs in. That is the academic phase. And as I mentioned earlier, it's arguably the most straightforward because you sit and you study and you pass or you ace in the context of what we want to achieve, and then you move on to the next phase in terms of your career. The next phase, once you've completed your LLB or Bachelor of Laws, or in the case of someone who's coming in from a different profession altogether, a GDL or a graduate diploma in law, is to enter into the vocational phase of your legal career. Now this, I would argue, is the first occasion in which a proper divergence, so to speak, would occur in terms of those who want to become practitioners, those who want to maybe supplement their existing skill set and stay on the same pathway or the profession that they're in, or to just take a complete 180 and utilize the qualification that they have as a mode of going to the next step or upskilling themselves in an entrepreneurial venture. This is something which might be a niche, it's quite rare, but it's still an opportunity available to someone who has studied law. I'm going to focus primarily on a person who intends to be a practitioner, because most vocational programs that are available in institutions and universities cater to this purpose, because essentially they are feeding into the fraternity itself. Now in the vocational phase, you start seeing a little bit of attenuation in terms of what is provided to you by your institution or university. When you were in the academic phase and when you were in university, there was a regiment that was set up. And while that is the case when you are in the vocational phase, for example, if you're doing a BPTC or a BPC, a bar practice course, or an LPC, the legal practice course for solicitors, or the more modern equivalent, which is the solicitor's qualifying examination, the SQE, both formats or both vocations, so to speak, have a fairly streamlined pathway that you need to follow in order to succeed. But that being said, the resources, the mode and the method by which you're going to complete this are vastly different in terms of how you would have gone through the academic phase. And this is the first instance in which most students tend to trip up. What I mean by that is they expect to do their vocational phase, or they expect to do their vocational studies in the same manner that they pursued their academics. It's vastly different in the sense that whereas your LLB or your GDL would focus on substantive law and more academia, the vocational phase in terms of your BPC, LPC or the SQE wants to focus, or wants you to focus rather, on your skills. It's trying to surface what you are analytically looking at on the one hand, but also how pragmatic and practical you are when a scenario is presented to you. So sometimes you might think that it's about the knowledge, but rather it's really about the skill. And especially in the second stage of most vocational programs, let's say for example in advocacy, which is a topic or a subject that is taught in both the barrister's program and to some extent in the solicitor's program as well, it's not really about your knowledge as such, but how you present yourself and articulate arguments. This is why it helps to tether your academic phase to the vocational phase. For example, had you selected something like mooting or debating or even advocacy, which is a rarity but available as a subject in some universities during your academic phase, it would have been quite helpful when it comes to the vocational phase. Just like taking up a subject like evidence or civil procedure or criminal procedure in your academic phase would be helpful later on when you're in the vocational phase doing your solicitors or barristers. But the vocational phase, mind you, is important for you to level up. This is where you are going to get your practicing license if you are a practitioner or if you're intending to be a practitioner. This then segues nicely to the growth phase of your career. You have gone through your academics, you have followed the vocational phase, you've got your licensing, you might even subsequently have several years in terms of the practice. But a lot of students and then practitioners thereafter become stagnant at this point because they fail to upskill themselves. They keep to the momentum that they have set. Sometimes they have become exhausted from the process that they've been put through during the academic and vocational phase, and they get comfortable where they are. They don't want to take up opportunities. They don't want to increase their knowledge and upskill themselves. They tend to get comfortable and stay where they are. Now, whilst there is what I would like to call a relative honeymoon period, so to speak, soon after your vocational phase and getting your practicing license, that you can enjoy establishing yourself, you shouldn't get too comfortable in it. The reason for this, and I've seen this in terms of most of my fast track and masterclass students that are coming into study after quite some time being out of study, it's very difficult to get back on that trajectory, to have that mood, so to speak, in order to proceed with academics or some other form of study. So take a break, sure, but don't take one for too long. This growth phase is what really separates the good from the great. This is what will determine if you are a practitioner, if you're a legal professional that can set themselves apart from the rest. Those who are able to not just traverse in their jurisdiction but go beyond borders, go outside of their own comfort zones to become industry experts and professionals that others look up to. So the growth phase is, I would argue, the most important phase and one which is often overlooked. Right. So in terms of developing your career trajectory or your career plan, always remember that these three phases, the academic, the vocational, and the growth phases, are important in that order. Some try to combine everything. They tend to try and find combined programs of academics and vocation, or they try to find accelerated programs to get their growth supercharged and so on. But whilst this might seem archaic and it might seem relatively slow paced, it's always good to have a sequential process in mind. Get your academics done, go through the knowledge base and try and absorb as much as possible. Supplement with whatever is necessary for you to succeed in your vocational phase. Once you get to your vocational phase, take part in as many extracurricular, so to speak, activities so as to build a reputation and name for yourself well before you get into the industry. That networking that you'll do there will then help you in your growth phase to upskill yourself in terms of the profession itself as well as your academics later on. That being said, until the next time that we speak, have fun, stay safe, and as always, obey the law.